Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Taking Up Space with Jordan. I'm your host, Jordan, and welcome to the last episode of Taking Up Space for 2025. Last week was supposed to be the end of the season, and we were going to kick back up in the new year. But I don't know, something was in the air, and audio and video just weren't working for me. So here we are today. This is going to be a reflection of kind of how 2025 has gone and where we're going in 2026. And I hope that you're super interested, and I hope that you continue to support me in 2026 because I feel like there's a lot of big changes coming up for me and I would love to share them with you. So let's get into it. So a couple of things that I've talked about over the past year for me are I feel like I have been in a transition stage in 2025. And I didn't realize that though until probably a month or two ago. And what was happening is I was battling or having this friction of what I wanted my life to look like versus where I actually was. And where the friction was there were so many things happening at the beginning of 2025 that just really set me adrift for the rest of the year. It became really difficult for me to kind of swing back and get back into the rhythm of things. My routines, my habits, those were fine and everything, but there was just something emotionally. Basically, at the beginning of the year, my dogs both became very, very ill. And it was the first time in a very long time where I felt truly alone. And I hadn't felt alone like that since, honestly, in my marriage, full transparency. I think why I felt so alone was because it was just everything was on me, trying to maintain my job, trying to maintain my household, trying to figure out what was going on with my dogs and advocating for my dogs at the vets. And so there was just a lot of emotional drain that happened at the beginning of the year. And it took a lot to get back to the place that I am in today. And I also realized that I don't want to be alone. And I think that that's really hard to say out loud. I think that's really hard to hear yourself be aware that you don't want to be alone. And it's not necessarily that I am lonely. I think there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I feel alone in that I'm kind of on this journey alone or on my own. I think when I think of what 2026 brings me, I hope that maybe I find a relationship and find somebody who supports me and I can support them and it's a healthy, loving relationship. But I think the biggest thing that came for me when I realized I wanted to be in a relationship again is I have no idea what it means to be in a relationship for me today. I have done so much healing over these past couple of years. And now I'm sitting here going, what does this version of me look like in a healthy, happy relationship? And that's foreign to me. It is so hard for me to even imagine what that might look like. And so going into 2026, I am really trying to lean into the curiosity of what love is and what love can look like for me, whether that's self-love, platonic love, romantic love. I'm really trying to be more curious and be more open to the idea of who I love and who I let into my life, I think is the better way to phrase that. I think the other part that I think about when it comes to being in a relationship or trying to decide to be in a relationship is being on the dating apps is not good for my mental health. I don't think it's really honestly good for anybody's mental health unless you're being successful on the dating apps. But what I don't want to hear anymore is someone saying, give it time, because here's the thing. The people that are saying that are the ones that are in happy, healthy relationships. And when I hear those types of words, I just roll my eyes because who are you to say, give it time? And I know that might sound mean. That might sound petty, but who cares? It's my emotions. It's my life. But I think it's more than time. And I think that's where my frustration is when I look around in the world and I see who I am interacting with, I'm not seeing somebody who is even the potential for a future partner. And I think that that can be frustrating for a lot of women out there who are trying to find partners, who are trying to find people, or even just like find people to be curious about. I think that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm like, I'm in stage one. I'm like, I just want someone to be curious about. I want someone to be like, maybe. The other thing about 2026 that I'm very excited for is I spent the last month just immersing myself in writing. And it has truly brought back so much joy in my life. This was something that I have always wanted to do since I was a kid. I remember writing stories all the time in notebooks. I used to ask for journals and pens when I was a kid just so I could handwrite stories. And I lost a lot of that growing up, going to college, doing the corporate thing. And I sat down a month ago with this story in my head. And I was just like, I'll just write a couple lines and like it, maybe nothing will come of it. And now I'm at like 45,000 words and I'm posting about it on my socials and I'm not scared to talk about it. I think that's one thing that's like really fun for me is I may not be ready to share this story, but I am sharing that I'm writing. And that makes me happy. And it makes me feel like I'm finding alignment in my life. And I am becoming, keyword there for next year, but it feels like I am becoming the person that I want to be. When I think about what I want my life to look like in a few years from now, it is hanging out with my dogs and writing stories and telling stories and people enjoying those stories. And it's not necessarily about like fame or fortune. I mean, everyone wants to get paid to be able to do the thing that they love, but I want to tell stories. I want to bring people into this fictional world that I live in and I want to have all of these characters play with each other and get to know each other and break up and fall in love and fight each other. And I want that. And in 2026, it's going to be the forefront of my goals. And that comes with creating new routines. And so for me, that has been instead of journaling in the mornings, I've actually been switching that to writing time. And then at nighttime, when I'm going to bed, is I wash my face. I kind of think about what I did for the day. And then I go and journal for a little bit. A lot of my journal right here is the stories that I'm currently writing. And there's scenes, and I can see all of the things playing out in my head. And to be able to put that to paper, I don't know, it just brings a joy for me that I haven't felt in since I was a kid. I think when you're sitting down and you're thinking about your 2026 goals, which I know can feel overwhelming. I know it can feel like a lot to think already about 2026 when you're still struggling in 2025. But I like to look forward to things. I think giving myself the hope and the promise of tomorrow is really important. And I've also discovered that when I tell myself today is going to be a good day, the day ends up turning into a good day because it's me taking control over how I am going to show up in different situations that happen throughout the day. And so in 2026, I have this kind of mantra that I am living for me today. Whether that looks like it's just making sure that my kitchen is clean, whether it means writing a bunch of words, whether it means just making sure my dogs get enough exercise, whatever that might look like for me, that's how I'm living my life in 2026, because that is what's going to get me to becoming the version that I want to be. So when you think of your 2026, when you think of all of these overwhelming goals that feel like they're too much and like you could never accomplish them, I want you to think about what you can do today. What is one small thing that you can do to make your life better? What is one small thing that can allow you to push forward, to hope for tomorrow, to choose today to be a good day? And it sounds simple, but it's hard. It's hard work. It's showing up for yourself every single day. And that can be exhausting. And sometimes you're going to lose. And I think that's one thing that's really important to remember is that you're going to lose on some days. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail. But the version of you that you want to be, she's not perfect. She's still making mistakes. She's still learning. She's still growing. You don't want to think that the version of you that you are imagining today, that that's her peak. She has her own goals. And I know this episode's maybe a little rambly, but honestly, I couldn't re-record that part 4 again. I just couldn't because, sometimes when you repeat yourself over and over and over again, you kind of lose the joy in it and it starts to feel like a chore. And I never want this podcast to feel like a chore. And so even today, when I decided to sit down and record, I was like, I'm not going to put any makeup on. I'm going to put on a t-shirt dress. I'm going to be comfortable. I still got to wash my hair. And that's going to be okay because this is the space that I choose to show up in my most honest self. And this is what it looks like. It looks like me rambling. It looks like me looking off into the distance. It looks like me pausing just because my dogs are barking. It looks like me hiccuping mid-sentence. But that's me. That's who I am. And I'm not going to be ashamed of her because she's gotten me so far to here. In 2025, I've put out more episodes than I ever have. I have more subscribers than I ever have. I have more TikTok followers than I ever have. And, maybe it's not the numbers that I wanted at the end of the year, but I think what's so much more important about that is I've learned so much about myself. I've become more comfortable in the cameras. I don't hide my body anymore. I don't hide when I have blemishes on my face because this is hard. Sitting in a camera, sitting in front of a microphone and talking, it's not as easy as people think it is. It's not as easy to let people's bad words about you just run off your back. It's not easy to hear people in your friend groups snickering about your little podcast. And those people aren't my friends anymore. That solved that. Because if you are going to mock me for going after something that I truly believe in, why do that? Why tear somebody down for going after their dreams? Why tear someone down for trying to do something that is brave, that is trying, rather than just sitting and thinking about maybe doing it one day? So in 2026, I don't care what your word is. I don't care what your habits are, what your routines are going to be. But I do want you to not be too scared to go after the thing that you want to go after. I don't want you to be too scared because you think people are going to make fun of you. And I don't want you to be too scared to never try. Because even if this podcast were to end today, I get to say, I did it. I tried. I had a podcast for 2 years. That's pretty cool to me. I had almost 100 followers on YouTube. That's pretty cool to me. I had 532 people on TikTok following me. That's super cool to me. And if my little podcast is all it ever becomes, that's fine. Because at least I tried. At least I did it. So in 2026, just try. Who cares what people say? Because honestly, everyone has a hot take, but none of it is hot. None of it matters. Because the only opinion that really matters is the one that you have about yourself at the end of each day. And I get to go to bed each day knowing that I'm going after my dreams. And to those that aren't, I pity you. And I hope that you can find the courage one day to at least try. So that's the last episode for 2025. I am going to go and enjoy the next 13 or so days. I'm going to be prepping for 2026, making sure my home is clean. I'm going to enjoy the holidays with my family. And I hope wherever you are in the world, I hope that you can find it in you to find the courage in 2026 to finally do it. Whatever it is. Maybe it's finding that new job. Maybe it's finding love. Maybe it's writing that book. Maybe it's driving a race car. Whatever it is. I hope you're able to do it in 2026. And I hope that you at least start to take one step towards the goals that you want. Well, that's the end of it. Happy 2025, everyone. Kisses.